Morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever this advisory council meeting is taking place. Dear fellow members of the advisory council, colleagues, I hope you all are doing fine during these difficult days. I myself has become ill because of COVID-19 and I'm still an active case. I'm still speaking before you, but it will not be as long as I wanted my intervention to be. I'll be quite straightforward and like to remind you the premise on which ISUM was founded or the UNESCO's executive board started discussing about it some 8 years ago. As this would be the basis on which the subsequent approval of ISUM was uh, made, and this will be the basis on which ISUM will be evaluated by UNESCO and its member state in the next cycle of its approval. The agreement between government of Slovenia and UNESCO was signed in September 2012 for 6 years to establish ISUM as a Category 2 center under the auspices of UNESCO. The center was established to undertake, and I will read that out for you, exchange of knowledge and experience regarding library automation and prompt monitoring of research result, strengthen cooperation between governmental expert business entities when intensifying the transfer of knowledge into practice, deepen knowledge and experience in the specified fields, taking multilingualism in the region into consideration, specialist training and education for the purpose, establish own knowledge and training centers for the needs of library and automation, exchange of experts between participating countries, and lastly, to continue knowledge flow via specialist press conferences and web communication. So it was an extensive array of a mission and mandate that ISUM had received and was examined by executive board and then later on was approved by the General Conference of UNESCO, which at that time involved some 195 countries and several associated members. The center was then formally inaugurated on 12th October 2012, but because of some constitutional clause, the center could only become operational since 14 January 2020. Thus, we are not revisiting the center, but starting afresh. Because whatever we did before, although we did it as ISUM or as a Category 2 center under the auspices of UNESCO, it was not formally recognized as Category 2 center under the auspices of UNESCO. So this would require some rethinking and renegotiating some of these points. So these six. Since 2012, the world has significantly changed. Many of the changes are for better and few are for worse. We still have a billion people who still can't read and write. We have similar number of people who live for less than $1 per day, and almost 720 million people sleep hungry at night. Amidst these challenges, in 2015, the world agreed to embark on a new developmental journey. From IJUM's standpoint, a key issue emerged, and this is quite striking as well as very important for IJUM. And it had a consensus of the world leader. It was the position and take as well as the place of knowledge in the development lexicon. Whether it's poverty or hunger, knowledge was taken as the panacea that would find or offer a solution to solve these developmental challenges. In this way, your centerism or our centerism now plays a much more important role than when it was originally conceptualized back in 2011 when government of Slovenia had offered ISM to become a Category 2 center under the auspices of UNESCO. Let's now revisit the objectives and how can ISM support UNESCO. First, and what I will do is, and I'll take you through these array of objectives, and we'll try to see that where can we come in and then maybe relook at some of these objectives and reevaluate whether or not some of the underlying objectives of ISUM needs to be kind of retrofitted to match and or to become robust enough to address challenges of 2020. First, ISUM's role to exchange knowledge and experience. The theme of inclusive knowledge societies continues to be at the heart of UNESCO's work to fulfill the WSIS objective, WSIS is World Summit on Information Society objectives, and overcome the four several challenges outlined above. Inclusive knowledge societies are societies in which people have ready access to information and communication resources in languages and format that suit them and the skills to interpret and make use of them. This facilitates the creation of societies in which people have the capabilities not just to acquire information, but also to transfer it into knowledge and understanding, which empowers them to enhance their livelihoods and contribute to the social and economic development of their communities. Libraries were taken as a locus of these activities because library would otherwise generate or become the source of knowledge for those people who wanted to acquire knowledge from. Yet, despite rapidly advancing technological development, making research or the library or knowledge resources fully accessible is still not a widespread practice, and there is a global divide in the state of knowledge. This gives us, as members of the advisory body, a challenge. Should we remain happy and complacent that ISUM has played its part in exchanging knowledge and experience regarding library automation, or there is a need to aspire for a higher objectives? I leave this as a riddle for you to find answer, and I hope that the advisory council members, with their wisdom, will come up with the right sort of response that we can come up with to showcase to the world. The second objective of ISUM was to strengthen cooperations between different stakeholder groups. Sharing of information over the digital medium requires internet, which is characterized by multi-stakeholder participation. The Tunis Agenda for Information Society, adopted at the second session of World Summit on the Information Society early in 2005, acknowledged that multi-stakeholder participation is essential to the successful building of a people-centered, inclusive, and development-oriented information society. It also encouraged the development of multi stakeholder processes at the national, regional, and international level to discuss and collaborate on the expansion and diffusion of internet as a means to support developmental efforts to achieve internationally agreed development goals. And at the same time, it said that maybe traditional way of library sciences would not be as effective. So it said that why not library science also rise the bandwagon of internet revolution, and then provides the kind of knowledge that citizen as well as different stakeholders require in this state of play. The goal of multi-stakeholder participation is to improve the effectiveness and quality of decision making by including all those who have an interest in the knowledge democratization process and its impact on wider social, economic, and cultural development in open and transparent decision making processes. The United Nations General Assembly, in its 10th year review of WSIS outcomes of 2015, which again, I would reiterate, happened after ISUM was already inaugurated, but had not come to act as the full-fledged Category 2 center under the auspice of UNESCO. This review in 2015 reaffirmed the value and principle of multi-stakeholder cooperation and engagement. It recognized that effective participation, partnership, and cooperation of governments, the private sector, civil society, international organization, the technical and academic community, and all other relevant stakeholders within their respective roles and responsibilities, especially with the balanced representation from developing country, has been and continue to be vital in developing information Or now, in the change context, it was said that for knowledge societies, the UN's 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development goal also called for multi-stakeholder partnership to be established that would mobilize and share knowledge, expertise, technology, and financial resources to support the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals in all countries, in particular developing countries. The extent to which stakeholders do or can participate effectively is determined by a number of factors, including the extent of their awareness, interest, concern, and knowledge again. The level of agency or responsibility for internet related outcomes, and the nature of the consultative and decision making processes involved. This gives us an added sort of impetus on the second objective. Should we simply hope to strengthen cooperation or develop new thinking for region to address the thinking that has emerged from these new multi-stakeholder engagement? Are we happy with the kind of stakeholders that we are dealing with, or it requires a reflection? And if it requires a reflection, what kind of newer reflection is needed, and to identify who our real stakeholders are? Have the traditional stakeholders remained our stakeholders, or they have changed? Who are the new stakeholders that we should go and start tapping their potential to drive ISUM's agenda forward? Thus, I invite the council member again to undertake stakeholder analysis and develop a fitting strategy for individual stakeholders who have some stake on ISUM. This again would bring me to the point that I had made earlier on, that that when the effort to generate a sizable amount of resources by mobilizing EU, we needed to reach out to the governments, and the governments would provide their stake in the overall, ISUM's work on this, library automation, and then its expansion in the yet uncovered area of the Balkans. Unfortunately, the countries could not find a consensus on their activities. So again, I think that we may need to reevaluate how we define and justify some of these stakeholders who can help us take these agenda forward. Thirdly, ISUM was established to deepen knowledge and experience in the field and take a multilingual approach to transfer knowledge into practice. The open movement that started since WSIS process and concretized after WSIS plus 15 process have provided sufficient basis that librarians must not be taken simply as the custodian of books and bibliographic references, but custodians of open knowledge providers of open solutions. So if you are open knowledge providers, custodians of open knowledge, and the providers of open solution, then perhaps the work of IJUM thus must expand beyond simple bibliographic database alone. Perhaps it needs a redefinition of some of the core mandate of ISM. It must graduate as a locus that assists in various processes that helps in freely sharing information in order to improve the quality of decision making. May it be like in text literature, or it may be data, or it may be software, it may be algorithm, it may be other things, which have become part and parcel of the knowledge pool these days. So the center's future work, therefore, should establish ISUM within the broader framework of inclusive knowledge society. ISUM must play a part in customization of knowledge, connection of knowledge pools, and streamlining a synergistic push to create knowledge society. The general consensus of researchers involved in any area of the SDGs, or the Sustainable Development Goals, be it to reduce extreme poverty, to reduce incidence of maternal mortality during childbirth, or to provide safe drinking water, for example, is that open sharing of knowledge is critical. So perhaps ISM should start, jumping its effort primarily to become a vanguard or a champion in open knowledge system for not only the Balkan or this region, but at the same time beyond this region. I'm sorry, I'm coughing and I'm still not very well. I'm running fever, but anyways, this is all for you, my fellow advisory council members. The fourth objective here we had conceived at that time was to initiate specialist training and multilingualism. ISM's effort must accelerate the rate of generation, preservation, dissemination, exchange, and utilization of knowledge. And this work must take place within the larger spectrum of knowledge divide. Your work must build capacity. As such, knowledge divide can be in terms of contents or in terms of tools or in terms of processes. Also, there is a need to expand the spread of language that ISM is addressing. Next year, UN will embark on a decade-long initiative on indigenous languages. Perhaps ISM should rise up to the occasion and offer it as a custodian of knowledge resources in different languages. This will, in fact, pretty much in your comfort zone, and perhaps this will bring ISUM as a major stakeholder partner in the way that the decade will carry forward some of the activities that it plans to do. And if you need more information in this one, I stand ready to provide you with all the information on this. So this will primarily make ISUM strategically important, not only for UNESCO, which it already acknowledged, but beyond UNESCO's immediate sort of purview. So the fifth objective that was why ISUM was established was to train and retrain and establish a training center. ISUM must assist in building national capacity to enable public access to information. This will involve developing curricula, learning tools, massive online open courses. I think it will be a good idea to at least come up with a compendium. You're several countries put together. All of you are one or the other linked to either National Library or key universities in the region. You may have several of these things. How about pulling them together? We were recently approached by Bosnia and Herzegovina because they want to develop something on data sciences. We have said, and we are considering that particular proposal. But it would have been wonderful if some of these the knowledge developed from some of these initiatives are somehow plowed back into ISUM's mechanism or knowledge democratization processes. That would essentially close the loop and also create a condition not only for synergism but at the same time for for adding value to a body of information and knowledge that already exists in that particular area. So this is again for your consideration to think something along that line. So the other thing, our recent experimentation has emerged that micro learning is extremely useful and perhaps much more important and effective than MOOCs or this massive online open courses. So perhaps IJUM could become a repository of small micro learning experiments that is happening in the region, and then keep it some way, make it accessible to the people as well as to your immediate stakeholder group. So perhaps ISUM's efforts should bridge knowledge or capacity divide. If ISUM cannot support direct learning, perhaps it must facilitate modality for the stakeholders to mutually learn from each other. In this effort, I suggest that ISUM looks beyond its current sphere of work and reason, and at the same time start to look, what it can give, or take from less fortunate region from the world, maybe Africa or maybe South Asia and so forth. This cross fertilization could be extremely productive, and thus IJUM must document this and develop packages to revolutionize how this can be done. This effort will have a direct bearing on knowledge exchange between and amongst different countries. So once all things are done, the seventh objectives on which IJUM was found was to create, organize workshops, or organize other type of like brainstorming as well as knowledge exchange processes. I think those become extremely easy. In summary, as planned earlier, ISM must continue to work in the key area of, again, influencing the policies of how knowledge gets produced or processed or archived. It must bridge between where the knowledge exists and where the knowledge lacks. You have to build capacity, and then you have to disseminate as much as possible. Give us more, give us a lot of like things that you have done, so that what we can do is we can not only spread your work within the region, but also take it outside, so that there may be other centers that will look from your ISUM as an example, and try to create like ISUM of their own. Thank you very much. I wish I could be. I was there and I was attending this meeting live, and I was also told that the meeting would be primarily conducted in the a couple of local languages. Unfortunately, I do not speak your language, but anyways, as I've said, there is a need to look at some of the basic objectives on which for which ISUM was initially developed, and then maybe bring it up to date, so that ISUM becomes much more relevant to to address the, the newer challenges that the world has. And thank you so much, and bye bye.